So, guys, if you're still tuning in, Ant and I decided to record both episodes today. So he's going to flip the tables on me, and we're going to talk about my podcast journey. So,
yeah, and that's a really handy podcast tip that you can have for free as well.
yes.
You know, for the amount of time it takes to set everything up, record 2 episodes.
Oh, you know what I didn't do, Ant?
One.
I didn't hit record. Well, we'll have to pull the audio for yours on the video.
There you go, that's fine. But this is the thing, like we said, mistakes happen all the time. And the great thing about this is, you know, anybody that's worked in like the military or air traffic control, you know, you make mistakes there. That's a serious cost that comes with it. But here, you know, everything's fine, and there's always a way around it. So let me welcome you all to this episode of Begin to Podcast Villa. I'm Ant, and in a moment we're going to be speaking to Aimee, who's the boss, and all this is part of a series where we're sitting down and speaking with different podcasters that we know from all over the world about what it is that they get from podcasting, what got them into podcasting, and we're getting to the meaty stuff. It's not a sales pitch for what they do. It's just we're talking to people that have done really well and have made a career and have really spent a lot of time working on their podcast and trying to capture some of the excitement and some of the passion and some of the secrets that they have. And our second guest, should I say, depending on which way we edit this and put this out, my first time to interview is with Aimee. So Aimee, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Ed. It's kind of nice, though, I'll say, to be on the flip side. Yeah,
because your podcast is pretty much you interviewing people all the time. I've been on as a guest.
Yes.
You are now on 200 and how many episodes?
As of this recording, 242.
Wow, that's a lot of podcasting.
That is.
And how many years does that cover? How many years have you been doing that?
So the show is 6 years old, but wow. I've been podcasting since 2013, so about 8 years almost.
Wow. So, kind of 2 questions in one.
Yes.
What is it about podcasting that gets you excited, and how did that feeling change from when you started 8 years ago to now?
So, good questions. Well done. So podcast, what gets me excited?
Yeah. What is it about podcasting as a medium, as a tool?
That you never understand. You can't truly fully get the impact it can have on you. So when I first started podcasting, it was something rough. It was me, a microphone. Actually, this is my very first podcast. Where is it? This is my very first.
Oh, the Blue Yeti. I love
the
those.
Blue Yeti. I don't know if it'll clear up for you, but it was the Blue Yeti. There it is. That was my very first one. And I didn't know what to talk about. So I actually talked about like my experience at Comic-Con, and I did like a few episodes on that. But then I figured out how to kind of get it out there, get it launched in live. And what happened is that I was like, okay, I really enjoyed this TV show called Haven. And so I was like, let me do a TV show podcast on this TV show. And so I was like, I can't do it by myself because I realized that I'm not very good. I wasn't comfortable. I could do solo episodes now easily, but in the beginning, nope. And so I got a co-host. We did it. And it was probably 3 or 4 years that the podcast was. But that podcast took me and my co-host to Nova Scotia, Canada, where we were on the set of the TV show, where we developed friendships with the cast and crew, more with the writers. The friendships were more with the writers, but we met the cast and crew. We spent a weekend in Nova Scotia, Canada. They gave us one day to record with I think it was 10 people, including Emily Rose and Lucas Bryant, who are stars of the show. And let me see. So let me see if I can get it to, there it is. This was the show. This was actually our artwork for the show. And so it's on Netflix if anybody wants to watch it. And
are you on Netflix?
I'm not. I don't know that they didn't put me on a bonus or anything, but it was the most amazing experience. And that feeling, that craziness really is what kind of made me start my second podcast, Chasing Dreams, because I realized that there's a power in podcasting. And because I never would have thought in a million years we also went to LA to the production studio and met the composer. We met the writers. We did interviews. Never would have thought of this. Never would have thought this possible, but it happened. And so now I think the second question you had was, what gets me excited today is the same thing. So I have conversations with amazing people who chase their dreams. Hence, let's see, does this have the newest podcast? The newest artwork? And so that's the newest artwork. And these are called mic flags, guys, by the way. These are mic flags. So this was my very first mic flag to share with you guys. I don't know if there it is. My very first mic flag.
Wow.
This is how excited I was. It's not even my artwork. It's not even the name of the podcast. It's called Chasing Dreams, not Chase Your Dreams. But this was my motto. And so this is a mic flag of every show I've done. So this is my first one. That's my motto. And then my first one, my second one, and then this is my current podcast, Your Personal Hype Man. But I've met some amazing people with podcasting, hearing them. Some of them I've become friends with. And it still energizes me, these conversations. So hopefully that answered your question. I just still get excited by meeting people who are inspirational.
I did love the very subtle marketing plug for your podcast there. I'd just like to point out that is something that I would never do personally. And, for those of you not watching the video, currently holding up a t-shirt of my podcast, Wrestling with the Champ. That's a free little tip for you from this episode as well. You like marketing t-shirts, mic flags, stickers. There you go. Just have it everywhere. Just on that, the whole story, because I didn't even know what happened, and I don't know the show Haven, but I have worked on a fan podcast for a TV show over here, and that's the ultimate thing. I remember when we launched the show, there's a reality show called The Circle, and it's kind of like Big Brother, but they never meet each other. They're all in separate rooms. It's done through social media.
Oh, wow.
And the production team followed us and got in touch with us. And, at first they were just like, can you just make sure you're not saying that you're the official podcast? Right. And we were like, yeah, sure, that's fine. But then as it went on, they invited us down to the finale.
That's awesome.
And yeah, we just had this connection. And even though they kind of were protective of the contestants, we then, because there was nothing else out there following them, we were able to get some of the contestants on our show as guests. But for that's the ultimate goal of what your podcast must have been. And I think that's a lesson as well of you don't know what's going to happen.
No idea.
Yeah. It's like you literally, you start that domino falling and you see what turns out.
I will say this. It wasn't because we were doing it. So again, like we talked on Ant's episode, if you build it, it doesn't mean that it'll necessarily come. Kindness, I think, is what won the day. I can't speak for the writers like Brian Milliken or Nick Parker and who kind of vouched for us. But what they've said was, and I'm inferring this, was they really enjoyed how positive we were with other fans and supporting the show. And so kindness really paved the way for us. And so, if nothing else, guys, try to be kind. So I just want to put that out there because I think a lot of the success we've had with the show, with podcasts, and just podcasting in general is because of how kind we've been with other people and other podcasters.
Absolutely. But there are some great angry podcasts out there and some people who
true.
I adore who are very funny, like Bill Burr. But that's
true.
Yeah.
Find what works for you and do that. But I will say that kindness works too. So
let's moving on. What was, and this is a question you threw at me, so I'm going to throw it right back at you as well.
Okay.
On the way to make the podcast, because that's an incredible success. That's kind of like you couldn't have written that better in terms of what you were doing for how it turned out. Maybe short of getting a guest spot in the show. But along the way, you must have made mistakes with that show, with the shows that you do now. of all those mistakes, rather than focusing on the negative, is there a mistake that you made that actually turned out to be really positive? Like it taught you a lesson, or it opened a door that you weren't expecting?
I had a feeling, given that we worked on this, that question was coming, yet I still, perfectionism. I think, holding on to things, holding on to episodes, holding on to, you can work an episode, editing, show notes, right? Perfecting it so that it is perfect. And just, the problem is you're depriving the people who want to hear you from it. And you just got to let go. You just got to put it out there. There are going to be mistakes. There are going to be things that you wish you had done better. I had to learn to accept that and chalk it up to a lesson learned. I'll do better next time. And so I think, certain episodes, you stick to a schedule and you try to do it. But, when you when you move towards other people helping you with podcast episodes, meaning you have someone who does the audio editing or you have someone who does the show notes, it's important to just release, just give it up because they need it. So when I talk about this, I'm talking about things like when I record something and I'll do take after take after take, if it's a solo episode, and I just have to be like, no, just let it go. It's probably not as bad as I'm making it either. It's just in my head. Head. And I'll just hold on to it. I'm like, nah, I can't do this. And because of the first show, I had a co-host. I was less of that, but because it's just me on Chasing Dreams doing the recordings sometimes, I'll be like, Amy, you got to re-record that. I'll re-record my intros and outros over and over and over, but I wouldn't do it to the guest unless it was really bad. We have re-recorded, but for my first podcast, I would not ask my co-host to like redo an episode because I just wanted to be authentic. We were just trying to have fun. That was the whole intent of that podcast, was to have fun. And so I wasn't worried about how many people were listening. Whereas with Chasing Dreams, I'm a little bit harder on myself because I'm like, this is the podcast that is going to change someone's life and they're going to be happy because of it. And while I hope that's true and I hope it influences you, I hope it impacts you and makes a difference, I couldn't put the stress of perfection on myself with that. I had to stop. Yeah, I still struggle with it, but I had to stop.
I think something that really helps with that is having like a regular release schedule.
Yes.
And so if you have something where, like, say every Thursday, like we're doing this is going to come out, it just forces you to move on. And after a while, and I think what happens is sometimes you put out stuff that you're not completely happy with, but then you listen back to it and you go, actually, that's really good. And I think the reason why we get like that is because we care about what we're doing.
Yes.
But that can actually be the biggest barrier to what you're doing, because you're so passionate about it, you want it to be really good.
Yeah, and let me say this, guys. What Ann says is absolutely right? You want to put your best foot forward, but I want you to be mindful of putting your best foot forward and being dramatic about what is your best, right? Like don't obsess over it, because it probably is your best, but you're being nitpicky about the details or something, right? We're all humans at the end of the day, and so mistakes can happen, but it doesn't mean that what you're putting out isn't your best.
So with that in mind, is there something that you would like to learn about or improve upon within podcasts? Maybe it's a skill that you wish you had, an ability, a confidence. Maybe it's just a piece of software that you've seen somebody using and you're like, I like the potential of that, but I don't really know how I'm doing it. Or maybe something as simple as just taking a sound engineering course to understand how sound waves bounce around your room better.
I'm not even going to get technical about it. I'm going to go with, I've had 242, it's actually probably 230 something amazing guests on my show. Amazing guests, right? Of all walks of life. I would love to try and get people who are unattainable, who you think are unattainable, right? And work on that. And it's not to say I won't get the people who are easily accessible, but I haven't really challenged myself with trying to get people like Michelle Obama. Why not? I could try, right? And see, sometimes I think because there's a limiting belief in my head that has stopped me from trying to shoot my shot. And there are guests I've had on my show, like Dr. Freeman Rabowski, president of UMBC, Lovey Ajayi Jones, who has an amazing book. Go check it out, The Fear Fighter Manual. It's at professionaltroublemakerbook.com. Amazing dream chaser, amazing person. I shot my shot. She encouraged people to shoot your shot. I did with her, and she's been on the show twice. So it's possible, but I've never really pushed myself that way. And so I think that's something I want to challenge myself to do soon.
Soon. Not right now. No, maybe tomorrow.
There is too many things going on. No, I'll do it. I'll start now.
Okay. Perfect. And what's been like, just from all the experiences that you've had, and obviously there's a lot of things that have come through just out the periphery of podcasting. So obviously that's how we met, and how that's led us to doing this right now. Is there something that you could just point to and just go, either that was the best experience I've had from podcasting, or this experience sums up podcasting for me in terms of all the greatness that's in it?
So for the first podcast, it's being on the TV show set and recording. That was the best experience. For this podcast, I think it's the relationships that come out of podcasting for me, because I didn't really try to learn more. I didn't really try to learn more about podcasting. That first show, Revisiting Haven, was me figuring it out on my own and just going with it, being happy. Chasing Dreams was me taking it to another level by going to podcast movement, learning from other podcasters, figuring it out. How can I improve? How can I do better? And, we talk about the experiences that podcasting can give you and bring you. I think the best thing it's done is my relationships with other podcasters and other people, including guests. And that has been mind-blowing sometimes for me. Like, I've made lifelong friends from it.
I think there's that kind of ties in with the last question as well, and your answer to that as well, in terms of the shooting your shot, going for it, and so there's things that you've aimed for, and sometimes you get those things, but along the way you've picked up all these other wonderful experiences as well.
100%. Yeah. And one of the things, and one of the reasons we're doing Podcast Villa, if you guys haven't learned, one, I know Ant's in charge right now, but I'm going to say and put a plug. Subscribe if you're tuning into the replay. Do sign up on the YouTube channel for us. We're looking for subscribers. If you're listening to this on the podcast, subscribe to our podcast.
And can I just say as well, like just tying in with what we talked about previously about audiences, is we're very new. So like we've only got a handful of subscribers, but that's okay, because this is how you start out. When you build something, it starts off like this, and maybe we'll come back in a year and we'll celebrate 100,000 subscribers.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Right now we're starting with a couple, and you're going to be the next one, and you're very welcome to join us. Also, we've put together this little starter pack, if you will. It's just a document that you can take. So if you're thinking about starting your own podcast, it's just to give you an idea of the equipment that you make. Now, this is not a sales pitch. We don't get any affiliate for this. We're not endorsing any brands. We're just saying, look, this is some of the stuff that you'll see people using, you'll hear about. You can make do with your own stuff as well. But the link's there. Go and check it out. It has a list of it. And we've put together a couple of scenarios, whether you would be podcasting on your own, with a friend, with a bunch of different people. It's all there, and gives you an idea of the basics you would need, the absolute basics to be able to do it. And then at the other end, if you've got money to burn, the underground studio, all that kind of stuff. It's up to you. So that's just there. It's free. Go and check it out. There's no sales pitch that comes. You don't get We don't get a discount on the equipment that's on there.
Sorry,
Unless,
no.
of course, you work with those people and you want to send us some free stuff, then that's great.
Which is always welcome. And for those on the podcast, it's aimeej21.com/begin to podcast. Okay, so check that out. But the reason I said that was one of the reasons we started Podcast Villa, and you can see it in the icon for Podcast Villa, is it's about community. It's about the friendships and networking and connections you make through podcasting that will change your life. You just don't realize it.
Yeah, and I think what we're trying to do here, as well as share some of the knowledge that we've got, is also share that experience, those experiences that we've got from it. And again, just picking up on something I've just remembered now when you were talking about just why not go and ask, why not go and ask? And you'll be amazed that your paths cross with these people. So you mentioned Michelle Obama. I spoke at a conference that she spoke at, albeit I was there the year afterwards, but it was, suddenly you're like, oh, okay, so that's an avenue.
It's not as far apart.
No, it's not. And actually, with social media these days, you would be amazed. Like, some people will have social media managers, but others will just get straight through to the person.
Yeah.
There was a thing you may have seen recently with the actor Russell Crowe, obviously from Gladiator, LA Confidential, some big movies, huge star. And he did this movie called Master and Commander, where he was on big sailboat, right?
That was a good movie.
And there has just been a round the world solo yacht race that's gone on despite Corona, because it's solo. And there was somebody put out an appeal because one of the people taking part, she was a British, her name escapes me, so forgive me, but she was a British sailor. She had a really tough time doing it. She was about 3 weeks away from the end of the course, and it was her birthday. And her favorite film is Master and Commander.
Oh, wow.
So somebody reached out and just put a tweet out and said, does anybody know how I can get in touch with Russell Crowe? Because this is why. And they tagged Russell Crowe in the thing. Anyway, within 15 minutes, Russell Crowe responds and go, yeah, what do you need, Steve? just like that. And then within an hour of that first tweet being sent out, he's recorded a video with a personal message to this person saying happy birthday. And yeah, and that's one example, and we hear it all the time.
Yeah.
But you'll also pick other information up. So I've worked on a couple of martial arts podcasts. When we started, we put together a wish list of people that we'd like to have as guests. And so you have the likes of Jean-Claude Van Damme on there and Jackie Chan, that kind of thing.
Nice.
And just to the order that they came in, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Jackie Chan. The next day, I heard something on the radio that Jean-Claude Van Damme was coming to the UK for some event. So we then sent out some messages, and 3 days later, we were all in Manchester to interview Jean-Claude Van Damme. And it just happened as quickly as that.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So these kind of things,
I didn't know that.
It can happen. Yeah. So it's a very, what's the word I'm looking at? Like the normal rules don't apply.
No.
Like you can just go there and try it, and you would be amazed at what you can achieve. And when you look out there, and a lot of the really successful, really big podcasters didn't really know what they were going to achieve when they started out. And we're going to share some of those stories with the guests that we're going to have. I mean, we can tell you lots of other stories about people like this, but we're going to let people come on and tell you themselves. So what we're going to do, we're going to be back next week, slightly earlier time, because I'll be doing it at a more convenient time in the UK. I'll be interviewing a British guest, and then I'll be looking at some others from around Europe. And then the week after that, Aimee will be back at the same time as this, with somebody with a much nicer voice than me, because that's just the way Americans sound.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But that's it from us for now. Keep your eyes peeled, subscribe to this channel, and look out for what is coming in the next few weeks and months, because we've got some exciting things planned. Please click the subscribe link. If you're listening to this, because we will release it as a podcast a little later down the line, you can subscribe to the podcast. You'll get the next episode with all the interviews with our guests as well. And aimeej21.com. That's Aimee with 2 E's, AIMEEJ21.com begin to podcast. And that's where you get that nice little guide, which you can look at and just gives you an idea. If you're a complete beginner, it just gives you the bare bones of all the bits that you need to make a podcast. And in some cases, it's not as much as you think.
Yeah.
But that's it from me, Ant, and my guest tonight, Aimee, who's also my partner and friend.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you tuning in.
Listening.